really exciting.
Mm.
What about you?
No, I can't say I've sort of been doing anything particularly special. I mean, I'm been a bit busy at work, which catches up from time to time. But outside of that, I haven't been doing a whole lot, to be honest with you. Not at the moment.
Yeah.
I feel that I should be, but I'm not.
And your work? Tell me about your work. Why? What's busy, or have you? You're still doing the same category of work?
Yeah, well, I'm sort of. Did I tell you that they put me in charge of the store now? I don't know. Did I tell
No,
you?
you didn't tell me that.
It's only been for the last couple of weeks, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I kind of thought all that sort of stuff was behind me, but the slower that I walk, the quicker the past catches up with me.
Okay.
So what's been on your mind? Much at all?
Yeah, there's always stuff on my mind, and comes and goes. I don't think I've ever sort of lived in an environment ever before in my life where, to a large extent, most of my week is spent alone. You know, and
just because of the hours that Sue is working.
Yeah, you know, she gets back at in the morning. She starts a bit later, but that's because she takes the grandchild to school, so she's out of the house anyway.
Yeah,
and she does some get set up classes. If she does get set up classes, then it's before that. Okay, so and then she gets back at 6, and she's tired. Okay. Very tired, and very soon she falls asleep, and we perhaps watch something, and then she just falls asleep in the chair. So it's an interesting, I don't know, it's an interesting stage of my life, I guess one could say. That is the case. You've been living on your own for a long time, though, haven't you?
Yeah. Probably couldn't do it any other way now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like a new experience, that's all. And it's quite a recent new experience.
Was there any reconciliation for Sue with her son at all, or is that all just gone?
No, it's gone. And
that's a shame.
It is a shame. I brought the subject up with her because he's in, let's call it, in the Perth area. Okay, he's still in the Perth area and works in the Perth area, and we know this because his ex, they have mutual friends. Okay, or used to have, I don't know, and so she gets feedback on what he's doing and so on. I don't get any. I'm not interested in getting feedback on what he's doing. But we had a conversation, Sue and I, just about a week or so ago, saying that really maybe we've got to make some positive action and try and get him, sort of back into the fold. And
it's a difficult subject, isn't it? Really is,
Yeah.
Especially on the light of, on the back of, his actions to dismantle it all, So.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that he doesn't make any contact with his child.
That's hard to fathom, isn't it? Really is.
Sue says he takes after his father. Okay.
But isn't that a good reason not to do
it? Yeah, but she was married to him for I think 33 years, and he just was just not being a good guy towards her. Okay. And also he gets very depressed, and very depressed, and so does the son. Okay. So, but I'm going to keep going on because I think there has to be some sort of at least communication. I think it must be affecting him.
An absent father is a horrible thing for the child, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it affected her. She sort of. I mean, she's only she's now 11 years old or something, and
but still highly impressionable.
Very much so, especially at this age, and so she's like, in a large extent, lost interest in school, and finds every reason not to go to school. And I don't know what age in Australia a child is allowed to stay by themselves in a house.
No, I'm not sure either, to be honest with you. But
yeah, she does, and so, yeah. Not that. Anyway, change that subject. What I've been thinking about is just existence. And that's probably how we got that angle of the conversation. Was, there's the physical existence. Okay. Now, how do we know that there's anything else other than the physical existence? Okay. I'll partly answer that for myself because I've been thinking it through. I've even been chatting to Chatgpt 4 about it, because other than our weekly chat, I really don't chat to anybody else. And it was quite interesting. But basically I'll just call him he, all right? What he said was, people historically, going back to the beginning of humanity, people had beliefs, had religions, okay? And then those religions, through maybe various individuals, would bring philosophies in, and people would then believe those philosophies, okay? And that would become part of them. They believed that there was a heaven and there was a hell, for example, okay? And they believed there was a spiritual world, and they believed in reincarnation, and different religions believed in different things. Then you got a New Age religion, and karma and all that. But it was all a belief, okay? People believed that there was what he said was, there's no scientific evidence that there is a spiritual dimension or dimensions, or that anything happens after death. And I quizzed him about, death-like experiences, and he said, you've got to believe the people that saw it, okay? But can it not be just an activity of the brain that thinking it's going to die, okay? So maybe like certain part of the brains are shutting down and so on. But he always comes back to the fact is there's no scientific evidence of a soul or of a spiritual world, or that a life after death, okay? It's only a belief system that we have. And I can understand where he's coming from, but it's true. I mean, how do we get any knowledge about the spiritual world? You know, yes, you might get it through logos, but there it's through an individual, and there you believe that individual.
Mm.
And then I asked him about, what about the pineal gland and the link with that to spiritual, and he actually found that very interesting. And he said yes, and he gave quite an elaborate explanation of the chemicals that the pineal gland connect, and he leaves it open. At this stage, there's not enough research being done around the pineal gland, but there certainly is a lot of things hanging with regards to that. But anyway, the long and short of it is, my thinking was, is there only science? Do we measure everything, but everything from a scientific point of view, or a belief that somebody has told us something, okay, or has written something, okay, and that it brings me back to Logos and to Moya. He did say, I can remember it clearly many years ago in a meeting, and that is that science and religion will become one in the future. Okay. And in the light of this conversation I've had with Chatgpt, is everything is science. So therefore, science is going to prove that there's a spiritual realm or spiritual reality. Okay. That way, I would bring it together. I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
Depends what you mean by prove, I guess. I mean, science already tells us that our senses are quite limited. So, for example, like there's, bats and sea creatures and that can see many more aspects of the light spectrum than we can. So yeah, it kind of depends on what you mean by proof. If the essence of proof is to prove that due to the limitations of our senses, is anything possible beyond that? Well, I think that's already been proven to be yes.
Well, not so much our senses, but our scientific knowledge and its scientific abilities.
But as I say, like from a scientific perspective, we know there's animals that can see into the infrared spectrum.
Yeah.
Just with their, the nature of the biology that they have.
Sure, and we know that dogs can hear more than humans can. But what is that? Yeah. What is that proving?
Well, what it suggests to me is that it depends on how we want to define spirit and how we want to define proof. If you flip that question over and say, is our direct experience with the world all there is? And the answer to that is clearly no.
Yeah.
Then I suppose the question that goes on the heels of that is then, well, if the answer to that is no, then what is it that we know that we don't have a direct experience of? And that's a much more open-ended question, isn't it? In terms of sight, sound, taste, touch, all of those things. I think science probably could prove that there's much, even within the existing understanding of the world, that there are other animals who can sense beyond our ability. But if you look at it from the more traditional sense about spirituality in terms of that word that you were pondering last week, that consciousness, then I think science has probably told us that, as far as we know, humans have the highest level of consciousness amongst all of the other animals. But I think that just by virtue of saying, well, we know that you can have different levels of consciousness, what's to say that even beyond our level of consciousness is that, why does it end with us?
Yeah.
And I know science doesn't like those sort of questions, but I think even from a personal perspective, like it, if I've asked myself the question is this all there is? Well, my own direct experience would say, no, it's not all there is. There's much, much more to it than this. But then if a scientist said to me, well, prove it to me.
Yeah, well, another aspect that I asked ChatGPT, I said, quantum physics has shown us there are other dimensions.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And his reply was, it's only theorized. Quantum physics has only theorized these other dimensions and so on, but they haven't yet proved that there are these other dimensions.
Well, what's proof? I mean, what does that mean?
Well, that's the point. You see, what is proof? Okay. I'm just using a simplistic comparison between science and belief. Okay. Because if it's either scientifically proven or it's a belief system.
Well, what about our dream state? Would ChatGPT say, no, that's not real?
What is that? Sorry?
Our dream state.
A dream state. Yeah. No, I never went there. Okay. But I'm pretty sure from the light of the conversation I had with him, that he would say it's a condition of the mind. Okay. Maybe linking to the memory or something like that. But he would take a logical approach. Okay. And always very polite and straightforward and never argumentative or anything.
Oh no, and there's no point to be argumentative. But it's sort of funny in one sense, because I mean, literally on the drive home from work tonight, one of the questions that came to my mind, not knowing we were going to have this conversation, was like with someone like Moya.
Yeah.
Do you see someone like Moya existing in both heaven and earth simultaneously? Because my view would be, yes, he is. And even in terms of my own spiritual journey, with my own prayer life and my own devotional practices and things like that, I think I do too. I'm in heaven and earth at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's sort of interesting, like, because I guess, my study of the Bible, like there's words like, well, like, when Christ was hanging on the cross and the person next to him said, like recognized him for who he was, and Christ said to him, well, I'll see you in paradise this afternoon. And the word paradise in those original languages actually means garden. So I'll see you in the garden this afternoon. And the other place where the garden was mentioned was in Genesis.
Right.
So if Genesis was in the distant past, and in one of Paul's letters, I think letters to the Ephesians, he's said, 14 years ago, I had this experience where I was in paradise, in the garden. So if the garden is in the distant past and in the past, and also in the near future, in terms of I'll see you there this afternoon. And when you look at Revelation, it's in the distant future. If you pose the question, when is the garden? The answer to that is yes. It's in the past, it's in the near past, it's in the near future, and it's in the distant future. So if the garden, within the context of the Hebrew Bible, says that heaven has and is and will be, then I think that's a tantalizing invitation for us to think about what that means in terms of how we live our life.
But it still boils down to the fact that you have to believe something that you've read or somebody that has said something, and you just believe. What makes it so convincing that it makes you think it's true?
Oh, I think. Well, for me, and I see it more than a belief. I see it as an experience, one that I don't think science could probably prove, but I think that the infilling of the Spirit for me is something that I know I've experienced. There's feelings that I've had and experiences that I've had. That I've had prayers that have been answered. I don't think they're random occurrences.
Yeah.
Not in my direct experience, but if a scientist was to tell me, well, prove it, well.
Yeah, no, I agree, and obviously I agree with you, because I absolutely know that Moya is who he is. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I have also experiences and so on. But take my brother, for example, who's slightly older than I am. He just says there's only science. Okay? Everything else, he calls it crap. Okay, he says you make believe theories. Okay, and
well, that's an interesting position, isn't it? Because what would happen if science made a big announcement tomorrow that yes, we can prove that there is a God?
Yeah, no, he probably
if it was crap today, why is it wonderful tomorrow?
Because today's science, he says, science can't prove it. Okay, but if it can prove it, then he'll be open to it. Okay, so he sort of believes in science. Okay, maybe that's a good word, believe in science.
So his God is science.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think obviously our conversation from last week about consciousness is really our way forward. Okay.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, without a doubt.
You made the mistake of asking me what I was thinking about, and
no, I think it's really valuable. I mean, it's things that should occupy our thoughts, in my view. Very much should do, and not only occupy our thoughts, but be things that we contemplate upon.
So tell me what you've been studying now in your biblical studies.
Yeah. So I do a weekly study. So in this sort of course, if you like, that I'm doing at the moment, it's a 30-week course. So to give you an idea of the subject matter each week, and it's basically like the language they use is a prayer. So what's the prayer focus for the week? So in the first week, It's God's unconditional love for me. So basically just looking at various passages in the Bible, and in terms of the process, it's one of, like, when you read the passage, you can read it and try and intellectually understand it. But the invitation through this process is to actually put yourself into the passage. So use your imagination to actually place yourself in whatever passage you're reading. As in, you can substitute someone else's name for your name, or you can use your imagination to. So the week one was God's unconditional love for me. Week two was God's ongoing creation. So let me just give you a little, flesh it out a little bit more. So week one. So it says we begin the program by reflecting on God's faithful, unconditional love for each of us. We consider who we are most fundamentally, or rather whose we are. Each one of us is God's beloved son or daughter. This is core to our identity. And there's a range of passages that you look at, each day, that you contemplate and use your imagination to put yourself into it, and so on. And then you reflect on that by journaling about it. So week two is God's ongoing creation. So God creates not just at one point in time, but continually. God's creative, life-giving spirit animates us and all of creation. During his it talks about one of the people in the past who how they encountered God. So this week we pray with our ancestors in faith as they marvel on the goodness and the ongoing activity of God in creation. So it has a range of passages which invite an exploration of that. Week three was the intimacy of prayer. The intimacy of prayer.
Intimacy, yeah. Okay.
Yep. So because God created us and continues to create in and through us, we are by nature related to God. In other words, we are created in the image of God, and that image is indelible. The challenge for us is to be more aware of that ever-present relationship, which is hard to do in a world filled with many distractions. So the focus of the week is on prayer as an intimate communication with God. As with any human relationship, we need to spend time together for that relationship to grow and deepen. Human relationships have different moments of greater and lesser intimacy, so too with God. Sometimes we are chatty, other times silent. Sometimes it's easy spending time with God, other times it's more difficult or taxing. There is no single way of relating to God, but as long as we are open, our relationship with God can grow in profound, sometimes unexpected ways.
Interesting.
So week four, God's invitation to greater freedom. So one of the goals of the spiritual exercises is to help people like me grow in spiritual freedom. So to overcome oneself in order and to order one's life. So spiritual freedom is an interior freedom, a freedom of the mind and heart. People are spiritually free, who are spiritually free, know who they are with all of their gifts and limitations, and are comfortable with who they are. They are able to discern God's presence, find meaning in their lives, and make choices that flow from who they are, whatever the circumstance. So that kind of is a little bit about what we've just been talking about, I guess, in some ways. But anyway.
Yeah.
They quote here John J. English, who's written a book called Spiritual Freedom, and he describes this freedom as acceptance of oneself as historically coming from God, going to God, and being with God. With this reminder of our most fundamental identity, we keep God at the centre of our lives. We'll work at becoming more aware of God's call in our lives and responding generously to that call. We have numerous preoccupations that get in the way of our hearing and responding to God's call: fears, prejudices, greed, the need for control, perfectionism, jealousies, resentments, and excessive self-doubts. These tendencies bind us and hold us back from loving God, ourselves, and others as we ought to. They create chaos in our souls and lead us to make poor choices. So, lacking spiritual freedom, we become excessively attached to people, places, material possessions, titles, occupations, honours, and the acclaim of others. These things are good in themselves when ordered and directed by the love of God. They become disordered attachments or disordered loves when they push God out of the centre of our lives and become key to our identity. So it says, as these weeks of prayer have emphasised, the fundamental truth of our identity is that God loves us unconditionally. This week we pray for greater spiritual freedom. In so doing, we become aware of our disordered attachments. Such self-examination will continue in the weeks ahead, so do not feel pressure to get your house in order within 1 week. And I'm sort of doing that one at the moment, like that's this week.
Okay.
But I've also got a note, thing here for next week. He always gives it to me a week in advance.
Right.
And this one is for next week, it'll be the principle and foundation. So he says, so far in the process, we've remembered God's faithfulness to us and have savoured God's unconditional, boundless love for us and all creation. Filled with gratitude, we respond most naturally by loving in return. All we want is to praise, love, and serve God, and we will do anything or make whatever sacrifices necessary to fulfill this most fundamental human calling or vocation. Such holy desires are at the core of the first key meditation of the exercises, the principle and foundation. It reads like a mission statement for the human person. I am created to praise, love, and serve God. Of course, this vocation is specified in each unique human life. When we live out this vocation, we are truly happy and fulfilled. When we allow disordered loves and self-preoccupations to clutter our lives, we find ourselves out of balance, unhappy, and discontented. The grace we seek is indifference. This term does not mean an unfeeling lack of concern. Instead, indifference means that we hold all of God's gifts reverently, gratefully, but also lightly, embracing them or letting them go, all depending on how they help us fulfill our vocation to love in everyday concrete details. Indifference is another way of describing spiritual freedom. It is a stance of openness to God. We look for God in any person, any situation, and any moment. Indifference means that we are free to love and serve as God desires. Spiritual freedom or indifference is a gift from God. We can't make it happen. But we can, over time, foster indifference by developing good habits of thinking, choosing, and acting. The principle and foundation is densely worded, but it is not meant to be an academic exercise. Consider it as an invitation for you to experience more deeply how intimately related you are to God and to all of God's creation, including other people, other creatures, and the natural world. In so doing, certain fundamental truths about our existence come alive. God creates me out of love in a particular time and place, with particular talents and temperaments, strengths and limitations. God continues to create and to reveal who God is to me and who I am before God. God invites me to partner with him to build a more just and gentle world. I'll learn that the best way to praise God is to be who God made me to be and to honour the uniqueness of all other creatures. Our appreciation of the principle and foundation deepens as we move through exercises in the coming weeks. So, and there was also a couple of things early in the piece about the idea of desire, like sort of getting to, like what's your deepest desire. So there was a bit of work around that as well. And also an exercise around how do you view your own journey, in the sense that, like in the Old Testament in 1 Kings, the analogy there is of like 11 teams of oxen. So how do they plough the field? Well, they pick something on the horizon and focus on that and move towards that, like a tree or something like that. So if the tree is, for example, the cross, then you focus on the cross and move towards it. But the other perspective is it could also be a bit like a river, in that you just get in the flow and just follow the meander of the river to get to, wherever you think it is. So, the analogy here is, they say, a child is born, the flow of my life begins. And if you use the parable of the river, my tributaries, who and what has formed me into who I am. The river runs peacefully. And you flipped it over, then look at it from a personal perspective, my source. In what space does my life's flow begin? What gifts spring up in time? The river seems to disappear underground. I seem to forget my deepest desires. The river is deserted for other people's purposes. I feel exploited. The river makes detours. I'm straying from myself. The river struggles through obstructions and boulders and dams. The river dries up. My life feels wasted. The river hits rapids. I feel frightened and alone. The river runs into a bogland and gets stagnant. Maybe there never was a flow. The river widens and deepens and becomes a source of refreshment for others, flows into deserts, making them fertile. Where's the river's destination? What's my deepest desire? So it's sort of two quite different.
Very interesting, very interesting. Yeah.
And one of the exercises from a week or so ago was an invitation to write our own psalm.
Okay. Yeah.
So I wrote a psalm that I called, I'll read it to you if you want me to. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
So I called it a Psalm of Marvels, celebrating God's creation in 2023. So I wrote, let me marvel at the diverse tapestry of creation, from the majestic mountains that reach to the heavens to the delicate petals of a blooming flower. Every aspect of nature reveals the handiwork of Yahweh. May I pause and observe the miracles that unfold before me, the vibrant colours of a sunrise, the soothing sound of water lapping on the shore, and the gentle breeze that whispers through the trees. All these serve as reminders of the power and creativity of my Heavenly Father. But in this age, it is impossible to ignore the marvels of technology that surrounds me, the breathtaking innovations in artificial intelligence to the mind-boggling discoveries in space exploration, daily science and technology, all allow me to witness the intricate workings of the universe in ways my ancestors could barely imagine. Delving into the realms of nanotechnology, genetic engineering, and virtual reality, I see the boundless potential of human creativity and intellect. These advancements not only enhance my life, but also serve as a testament to the brilliance of God's unfolding creation. I know God created the world and entrusted it to humanity. As Psalm 24:1 reminds me, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. This profound truth reminds me to be mindful of my actions and responsibilities and the impact they have on the delicate balance of nature. So too, in the hustle and bustle of this age, it's easy to overlook the wonder of relationships and the profound impact they have on my life. As I navigate the complexities of this fast-paced world, I pause and reflect on the gift of human connection. Relationships are not simply a mere coincidence or a product of chance encounters. They are intricately woven into the fabric of my existence, reflecting the very essence of God's love and community. Just as God exists in perfect unity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, I am designed to thrive in interconnectedness with one another. When I engage in relationships with others, I catch a glimpse of God's love for me. I see his unconditional acceptance, his forgiveness, his unwavering commitment to my well-being. Through my interactions with others, I'll learn to extend grace, practice humility, and offer support in times of need. Whether it be through a simple act of kindness, a heartfelt conversation, or a shared experience, let me embrace the beauty of human connection and honour the reflection of God's love it holds. Notwithstanding the awe of this creation as it unfolds today, I remember that science and technology are not separate from spiritual path. Rather, they are tools that enable me to delve deeper into the mysteries of creation and appreciate the intricate design of the world I inhabit. As I celebrate the marvels of technology, let me be reminded of the psalmist's words. The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Psalm 19:1. As I marvel at these human achievements, I remember they are ultimately gifts from God. The abilities and talents bestowed upon me are opportunities to honour and glorify him. When I recognise the brilliance of human innovation, I acknowledge the divine spark within me and the potential I have to create a better world with his guiding hand. As I stand on the precipice of each new day, let me resolve to live in awe of God's ongoing work. Let me take the time to marvel at the changing seasons, the dance of colours in the sky during sunrise, and the symphony of sounds in nature. Let me marvel at technological advances. Let me find joy in the laughter of children, the warmth of human connection, and the beauty of this wonderful creation, intricately woven by the hands of my Lord.
Ah, that's profound. Well done. Goodness me. You put a lot of soul into that. Eh?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm the actual author, but anyway.
It's certainly the instrument. Eh?
Mm.
Yeah.
Sort of funny, isn't it? Because I'd sort of forgotten about what I'd written, but in one sense, it's sort of like if you sat your brother down beside me, we're probably talking about the same thing, just a different perspective on it, aren't we? You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 So interesting. Well done. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you've actually written as well. You know, it's so creative, and what you've written is like almost your plan. It's your it's where you're at the moment.
Yeah, the writing is, well, as you know, it's always been important to me because it enables me to express things that I find difficult otherwise to express, you know. So, and I think even when I think about the Bible itself, like there's so much poetry in the Bible, so much poetry. But what better way to? Sorry, I'll just. Hey, how you going? Good. Can I give you a call back shortly? Would that be okay? Yep. Okay. Won't be long. But I mean, like with poetry, I mean, it enables you to explore things that a straight conversation can often trip over, can't it? You know. So.
Yeah. I agree.
Mm.
Yeah, that's. I'm really so proud of you. I think that's great. Yeah.
I'm thoroughly enjoying it, I have to say. I'm soaking it up.
Yeah. The actual course itself or the writing?
Oh, all of it. Yeah, I don't sort of compartmentalize it. I kind of.
Just life.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's my reality, I guess. So,
yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Makes me think.
What does it make you think?
My reality. I think we started this conversation off with my reality.
Mm.
And
It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because, like, if you asked, I'm not sure what sort of response you get, but if you ask Chatgpt 4 what his reality is,
yeah,
and I suspect his answer would be, what science has discovered. That's it. That's his reality, I guess, isn't it?
yeah. It's how technology has evolved very recently.
I wonder if artificial intelligence can have an imagination.
Well, it can. It depends. No, it can definitely. I mean, I get it to write stories. Okay. So I'm not sure. I believe it's not. Well, it's not copied from anywhere because I tested that. So it's not plagiarism. So there is some sort of creativity in that. And then, even in creating images and pictures and paintings, it does that, and those are original, and it can do it in any style too.
Yeah.
So
No, it's quite powerful, isn't it, in that sense? So.
it is, and I think it is creative. And it's expanding so fast. I can't believe it. Anyway.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Like the velocity of it is constantly speeding up, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
just it defies our ability to comprehend in many ways. So,
Yeah. I mean, one of the thoughts, doing some research, it could do away in the future. And I'm not saying this is a good thing, but certainly, let's say people like my brother would probably welcome it. Could do away with death. Okay, because there are now implants into the brain, and there's no part of your body you can't now energize or replace with artificial parts of that.
Well, I suppose one perspective is maybe there'll be a technology at some point which will enable you to download your consciousness into a mechanical device. I don't know.
Yeah, once we understand what consciousness is, but yeah. But anyway, it's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah.
I think I'm still happy to physically die at some point because.
Oh yes, definitely.
My perhaps foolish belief system tells me that it's just a transition.
Yeah, no, well, you and I know that. Okay, we really know that. Okay, so yeah, definitely, and you can't speed it up. Okay, through suicide or something like that.
No.
That then throws a spanner in the works. Okay, I have a belief about that one. Okay, and well, I know it too.
Well, it's also, if you sort of think about it dispassionately, it's just sort of has an arrogance underpinning, saying, well, why do I know better than my creator?
Yeah. And then you land up in not a good place until it was your time to die.
Yeah.
So yeah, No, I certainly don't want to. But I'm really enjoying getting customized to this being on my own. You know, the way we started, and it takes some adjusting, and you know, I'm going to see finally my 6 monthly blood checks as well. So see, I'm doing that on Monday. I'm getting the results on Monday, and I know that I'm healthy. Okay, I know I'm fit, and I know it's taken me a year to recover, and that's now coming up in November. But now, you know, what now? Okay, I need to get my hands back into other things, you know, like you're doing, you know, writing a song or painting a picture or making some furniture, and that, you know, that's I know that I'll find, because this is my 9th year cycle, so. You know, next month it swaps over now to year 1 again, and I've got a sort of a really keenness to look forward to see how things are going to unfold. So anyway, we'll talk about that when it happens.
Sounds good.
Okay, that's a good place to leave it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's a good chat.
Yeah, thanks very much for sharing your study, and I really appreciated that.
No, it's good.
It's really, it's great to see you doing that. It really is. Okay, so well done.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay then, you take care. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Yep. See ya.
Okay, bye.
Bye.